Welcome to Sproutcast, where we speak with changemakers, social innovators, and entrepreneurs about how to make the world a better place.
Thank you for listening to Sproutcast. My name is Julia Duffy, and today I'm speaking with Andy Fallshaw, co-founder and CEO of Bellroy. Bellroy is a for-purpose business that makes wallets and other accessories, but also works behind the scenes to effect meaningful change. Andy will share his vision and decision-making processes behind Bellroy. Thank you so much for joining me, Andy.
Thanks for having me.
Now, I wanted to start with talking about how Bellroy, your company, is pursuing the idea of a for-purpose business or business for good, and why that idea interests you so much.
So I guess for us, we're in a position where we don't need too much more in our lives for ourselves, like little car, little house, happy with a number of things. And when we looked around how to make the most of our lives, it sort of felt like there was just a huge opportunity to do better for people that weren't born into such an amazing country and given a good enough education and not born too rich or too poor, so that it was all there for us to do all right with. And when we looked around for how to have a life that could feel fulfilling and like we'd done the most with our potential and really done good things that went beyond ourselves, it felt like business was one of the best platforms to do that. So many incentives, so many decisions in the world are shaped through commerce. And so for us, we started a business that we thought could make good product that we could believe in, and then a business that could start to be a platform for both funds that we could redirect, as well as learning and ways of understanding and mapping and modeling the world that would then let us take that learning and help other organizations, other people, other folks do things really directly. So in a way, Bellroy is a tool for world flourishing. The better we do with Bellroy, the more we can learn with it, shape it, learn how to make a difference. The more resources we can grow, the more we can build a team that works incredibly well together to make a difference, to make impact. The more we can, push our influence beyond ourselves and start to kind of help the world be a better place, help those that weren't born as fortunate, help others that might not yet have a direction in life, but actually understand that they can shape a direction that helps others and does good things. So for us, business was a great platform. We could see the impact good business can have in the world. We wanted to do good, meaningful work, and we wanted our results to flow beyond ourselves. And so Bellroy was the business that gave us that vehicle. We shaped it in an area that we're radically interested in. We all have sort of grown up traveling a lot and trying to make the most of this fantastic planet we live on. And so having a product that facilitated travel and movement and helped people go beyond their backyard made good sense. It was in an area that sort of is a hybrid between design and engineering and science and art. And so it's a space that we love, we're passionate, we wanted to move about the world, and we wanted to shape a business that could have influence beyond us. That's kind of how we ended up with what I guess you'd call a for-purpose business. And it's how we feel like there's such a good role for for-purpose business in the world, just because of the power of commerce.
Awesome. And for those who don't know, Bellroy is a company that designs and makes wallets and other accessories. And so I'm wondering, within that context, how you think Bellroy is different because of these values, because of your for-purpose mentality, to other companies that might do similar things. What makes this feeling different?
I think in reality, there's probably not a huge difference for most customers. I think if a lot of people just want to engage with a product and they don't want too much messaging or social conscience or other layers put on top of it. And so for those customers, I think they'll mostly just notice that our products work pretty well and a 3-year warranty and they last pretty well. I think what the biggest difference it probably makes for us is just how much we can care. We don't make decisions on short-term profit. We make decisions on how to increase our influence in the world and how to spread good stoke and good things. And so the products generally go a little bit further than most. You'll notice more details in them. You'll notice that it keeps getting better as it ages rather than getting worse. So I think for those really paying attention, they'll start to notice that there's a lot of love for our customers, and we're really trying to serve them well, and we're really trying to have great interactions and delight them and make their life a little bit more enjoyable. But I think in reality, most people probably don't really notice that. They just go, oh yeah, this wallet's slim and it works well and kind of happy. And then it's those that start to engage more, where they'll really start to feel just how much love is in the product and the company and the interactions. And they'll start to see that their interactions with the brand are rarely with people who are disengaged and just going through the motions. I think when you scratch, if something goes wrong, if you're not sure where your shipping is, if you're unsure about something and want it clarified, I think the major difference most people will notice is just those that engage with Bellroy care a little bit more, because they're the sort of people that want to care a bit more about stuff. They are averse to apathy. They want to engage. They want to do things to the next level.
Excellent. Now, I'm interested, you mentioned communicating with customers, and this is something about for-purpose businesses that I'm quite interested in, about whether and to what extent they communicate to their customers or their stakeholders the particular vision that they have. And just in contrast to the extent to which social enterprises and not-for-profits tend to be quite engaged in communicating their vision with their stakeholders or with their customers. Is this something that you have thought that much about, or is it just kind of limited to you're doing good in the world and you want to offer a good service, but you're not necessarily kind of trying to push it down people's throats that you are this type of business?
Yeah, I think it's changing for Bellroy. So I think early on in Bellroy, we really didn't want to communicate too much because we didn't yet have runs on the board. And so for us, it was just head down, make some good product, find some customers who'll appreciate it, learn how they're using it, really get feedback, see if we can make it better, see if we can improve. I think early on, we really weren't talking much about what we were doing as a brand. We weren't really revealing what was happening, beneath the surface much, because we just wanted to actually get meaningful change out there. Then as Bellroy's evolved, as we've grown a little in scale, as we can start to show, what our 1% of revenue giving program's doing, as we can get that B Corp certification, as we can start to really do some good things on animal welfare and human flourishing, we're starting to sort of let some of that show through a little more. But again, there's so many things we do that we don't even talk about because we're just busy doing it, and we're busy trying to actually make the difference, and we're busy trying to support incredible movements like Effective Altruism and some of these incredible nonprofits doing just really compelling stuff. And so at the moment, we'll be giving them resources, we'll be collaborating, we'll be working on strategy. And we're still just so busy doing that we don't get around to talking about it much. So I think there's something about really make the difference. And if you're making enough of a difference, some of those things will start to show through anyway without you having to actively talk about it. I think there's so many companies not doing many good things that the couple of good things they do, they talk about so much. It starts to feel like brainwashing. It starts to feel like not real. And so it's a fine art. I think all of us are generally people that want to make the difference rather than talk about making the difference. So I think we talk about these things less than most companies would, but I think as a brand, we probably should start sharing more of those things, sharing the great organizations that are doing incredible things that we've vetted from, the world's best, and we think these people are doing the best in that area. I think they're things where we really should share that stuff more. We should talk about it more. And so I think this next sort of 6 months to a year, you'll start to see us sharing those incredible organizations and other things more. But it probably won't be about what we're doing there. It'll just be about what they're doing that's incredible and trying to get more people on board with them.
Well, awesome. I don't want to jump the gun too much then on that sharing, but it would be great if we could delve a little into some of the work that Bellroy is involved in. And just from the mechanics of how the company runs, it would be interesting to discuss your decision making and how being for purpose influences the way you make decisions and the kind of decisions that you have made, especially relating to the types of work that you get involved in because of this for purpose mentality.
Yeah, you bet. So, you talked about stakeholders before. We've made sure that we're in control of the decisions at Bellroy. So we haven't taken VC money that then starts to steer us towards their goals. We don't think we'd ever become a public company that then is beholden to these large institutional investors that have their own agendas. So we've made sure that we're in control of the decisions we make. And then instead of trying to please quarterly earnings reports, trying to please fickle people with short-term sort of investment horizon, we're investing for the greatest difference we can make. And so that means our investment window is longer term. It means we still need to make decisions to keep dollars coming in the short term, but we can pursue projects that are longer term, that don't make immediate sense to someone that doesn't sort of deeply embed themselves in all the complexity of the decision. So, yeah, we make sure we're able to choose our own future and direction. We make sure we're not slave to revenue. We make sure that we're not overextending ourselves to a point where we might have to start really compromising decisions just to keep money flowing in. And then we work really hard to make sure we're also not delusional. We use a whole number of amazing people to double check our strategy, to review our progress, to do things like that. So we don't need to do that through formal structures, but it's very much a part of making sure we're on track and we're not deluding ourselves and we're actually making a difference. So it's a big area you've asked around. That's part of our approach. I guess we have other things like we can put money and support into things that we don't need to talk about immediately. So we can do projects that we think will have a significant difference.
And could you tell us a little bit more about the projects specifically that Bellroy is getting involved in to help you achieve these aims?
So there's a movement called effective altruism, and it's based around this idea of, with whatever time or energy or funds you have, what is the most good you can do? So if you care about poverty reduction, then if you go to the third world, your dollars will probably have a bigger effect than if you spend them in the first world. So if you care about saving lives, what are the biggest impact ways to save lives? Is it distributing malarial bed nets so that you kind of cut off this, horrible disease before it even starts to happen? And for distributing so many bed nets, you can then expect to get a return and start to improve health and also save lives. So this movement of effective altruism is a growing movement with a whole number of organizations in it that I think it's easiest to describe as they take an approach a bit like what you're used to hearing from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, where it's not enough just to care. You've also got to really apply your rational mind. You've got to try and measure outputs, measure outcomes. You have your theories that this will work, but how can you actually get in and see that it is? And so it's a very rigorous community that constantly question themselves, constantly try and work out if there's an even better, more impactful, more powerful way to do something. So we try and support this movement in many ways: strategy, branding, funding, but then there's also many organizations within it doing really good things. So the most overt thing we did for Bellroy as a vehicle was, say, 1% of revenue, which doesn't sound like much, but it adds up pretty quickly. Every year we take 1% of revenue and we split half of it to human causes and half of it to animal causes. We use a lot of leather in our product, and we think that animal welfare has significant room for improvement. And so we work with organizations like Farm Forward to try and radically improve farming practices. So chicken, cows, animal products are still wanted. We use leather, which is generally a cow product. How do we make sure cows are raised, transported, slaughtered in the best ways we can so that those lives are much better? And then, so that gets 0.5% of our revenue. The other half goes to human causes. So that is things like Against Malaria Foundation that distribute insecticide-impregnated bed net, or that's things like schistosomiasis initiatives that go in and distribute deworming tablets that kind of try and really improve health of people in incredibly cost-efficient ways. And then there's all these wonderful flow-on effects like better school attendance and all of these excellent benefits that happen when you stop a kid sort of having constant diarrhea and horrible health effects. So we work to directly support some organisations like that, doing very direct work. But then we also working very hard at industry level. So the leather working group is one of the better environmental certifications for leather. It's the best certification we can find in the world. And we've been working with them to set up and chair an animal welfare subgroup that is working with some of the biggest leather brands in the world to see if we can change the way animal welfare is considered and certified and thought through in these companies' supply chains. And then how would you certify that? How would you do things? How would you ensure that better practices are actually happening? So there's some examples of what we do. And we also try and run a great business that's making good products in the world and can spread stoke and share good ideas about how to travel more and make more of this amazing planet we live on.
Awesome. It sounds like you've got a lot on your plate.
We do, sometimes too much, and sometimes we really have to sort of pull it back and kind of make sure we're focusing on the biggest opportunities. So that's also part of the struggle.
And it sounds like that's something that your whole company is interested in and invested in. Is that true? Is there kind of a cultural approach and interest in Bellroy's, I guess, external interests and involvement?
Yes, but at very varying levels. We've said that we're very happy to have someone in Bellroy who doesn't care about having an influence beyond themselves. They just want to do well themselves. They just want to be a better person themselves for themselves. We're very willing to have people like that. I think we're somewhat allergic to apathy. We want people who are engaged and living a deliberate life. But I think the inevitable part is when you start sharing a lot of these ideas and there's so many discussions around the offices, I think most people drift towards caring. Most humans do have, as soon as you get them empathizing more, as soon as you talk about these issues in any sort of depth, most humans will move towards them. And so it's at very varying levels. We have things like if an employee wants to donate to any of the effective altruist organisations, we'll match it. If they want to volunteer their time, they can have a few days working directly on these organisations themselves that can be part of their work-life balance. We have programs to encourage it, but it's not forced, it's not pushed on them. It's only for those that want to be a part of it. And there's others that just put their head down and do amazing work each day. And that's also good for us and good for the world.
Some of the policies you've just mentioned put me in mind of the B Corp program, and I understand that Bellroy is B Corp certified. I think you mentioned it earlier. Could you talk a little bit about what your experience of the certification has been like and why it's something you wanted to get involved in?
Yeah, you bet. So I'll start with the last part. We've been massively influenced by Patagonia. They've been such a generous brand to engage with. They sell our products in their stores, but they also have inspired so many businesses and shared so many great thoughts around being a for-purpose business. In seeing the way they went about things, they started their for-purpose programs, they started these things, but then they said, if we're to keep it honest and transparent, we need some form of certification here. We need some check that we're not just sprouting the words and not following through with the actions that make a difference. And so we had a similar approach. We said, if we are looking to actually be a business that cares about more than just profit, what sort of checks and balances would we have in place for that? And when we looked around at a program that it wasn't too prescriptive. So I think there's many different ways to have a good influence in the world. And I think that anyone that's positive that their way is the best way is somewhat delusional. I think we just don't know enough. I think if you take the environmental space, you can get people who are full-time professional environmental advocates, put them in a room, and they will have as many different opinions as there are people in that room. We just don't know enough about the very best ways right now. So what we need is more transparency, more debate. There's ways that are better than the bad ways. So it's like, excellent, let's not do these bad ways. But then there's got to be this active debate, this active sharing of theories and principles and results and what we're seeing in the world. And so you need some sort of a community to really start those active debates. You need people that have thought about this more than for an hour after they watched a documentary. You need people who are digging in and trying things and measuring the outcomes and seeing if they work. And so you're getting these two things from B Corp. One thing is a certification that you are actually doing these things that might be good in the world. And then the other part is a community that will debate and challenge each other and really think about which ways are proving more effective when they get to the ground. And the B Corp community, through B Lab, through the B Corporation certification systems, through the sorts of events they do, foster that community and that debate. And they also act as a certification to say, here's a company not just saying the words, but actually trying to follow through with various things. Now,
I'm sure we're all aware that a lot of the business world is geared towards what you mentioned earlier, the profit generation, satisfying investors. So I imagine it can be challenging to operate in this environment if that's not something that you want to be necessarily so geared towards. And so I'm wondering what types of challenges Bellroy and you have experienced.
Yeah, so to clarify, we are absolutely for profit. If Bellroy is a tiny little backyard operation, we're not going to be able to really influence the world for the better. And so we believe pursuing profit as a business can be an excellent goal. It just shouldn't be your only goal. There's so many other roles business plays in the world that if you only have one goal, you're going to be pretty one-dimensional and you're going to start breaking things. And so for us, the for-profit is a really important part. And Yvon Chouinard has been incredible talking about this with Patagonia. You know, he wants to show that you can make money doing good in the world. So for us, we have that similar approach. We want to be a profitable business, growing, offering great ladders up for our staff where they can keep growing in responsibility, in scope, in leverage. They can keep doing more and more interesting things in the world. But you're absolutely right that a whole chunk of business infrastructure is used to engaging with businesses whose almost sole goal is to make profit. So, for instance, when we were looking for an in-house lawyer, it was a bit of a nightmare because you go around and talk to lawyers about our goals in contractual negotiations are to find the win-win. Our goals are to find something that's fair and equitable and makes great sense for both parties. And that was something that a lot of legal folk had trouble with. They're like, yeah, but you still want to win, don't you? You still want to maximize it just for yourselves. And it's like, no, we want a good long-term contract that makes good sense for both parties, that puts the incentives in the right places, and it makes sure that both of us can have excellent outcomes. And it was just hard for most lawyers to get their head around that. I mean, they give it lip service, but as soon as you'd start to engage in something, it was all about, oh, if we do this, you'll get a leg up, and they won't realise that down the track, and you'll have this power over them. And it was like, no. And, we really had to hunt around, and then we found an incredible in-house legal who she was fed up with this one-sidedness of the legal game, and she almost found her refuge in Bellroy, where she could write up really fair contracts and she could do things that just made sense for both parties. And it was really hard to find Sarah. She was this rare being that was kind of disillusioned with the world she was having to work in. And it took us a while to find her. So you find that there's these well-worn ruts of this is the way we do business and this is the way we do things, and the remuneration and the incentivization and all those things are set up to support those ways. And those ways are often guided by a singular goal of making profit. And so when you have more complex goals than that, it can jar a little. You have to find accountants, professional services. You have to find lots of people who get it, who aren't just motivated by this singular goal of profit, but they have other goals of, having a good community around them, or giving back a little, or really seeing all of their staff flourish for the long term, not just, to hit the quarterly goals. So, yeah, you absolutely have to, especially when you engage with the outside world, there's a lot of things to navigate when your goal systems are more complex than that singular one of profit.
And are there challenges that Bellroy specifically faces in trying to live up to these aims that it's created for itself?
Absolutely. So for us, we're really trying to measure ourselves on progress. So rather than have this one perfect, milestone we're trying to reach, or this one thing that, if we don't reach these numbers or these goals, then we feel like a failure. Instead, what we try and do is progress every year, every week, every month, make progress. And so, for instance, when we started our leathers with an assumption of what the best leathers we could find were, that had, the lower environmental footprint, that had the right balance of animal welfare and all those things. We got in, we started using those leathers, and then we started learning more and more about leathers and started to realize, we sort of got that emphasis a little wrong. It needs to be a bit more this way. And then we really engaged with a lot of the people who've done a lot of thinking in this space in the world, and we start to learn more and more. And so for us, when we first got that leather working group certification, our tanneries, one of our existing tanneries wasn't yet certified. We swapped to another tannery that already was, and then we worked on our tannery to get them certified, and we then worked them up through bronze, then silver, then to gold. So for us, now we never touch a leather that's not gold certified, LWG, but early on, we felt like we needed to make that journey with our tanneries. We wanted to help introduce them to better ways. And so for us, we have this goal of better ways. It's this motto, it's this sort of thread that keeps going. And for us, it's not that we're trying to hit perfection, because no one knows what perfection is. We're just trying to learn more and do better each time we go back through an event, back through a process, back through something. How can we move that forward? How can we progress it? And I think that lets us not freeze with, paralysis as we pursue perfection. It lets us keep moving, keep improving things, and not get too cut up if they're not yet perfect, so long as they're getting better every single time we go at them.
Now, before I let you go, Andy, I wanted to ask if you could give a shout out to a company, an organization, or a person you think is doing great work in either your industry or in the for-purpose movement in general.
I think Patagonia are just incredible. I have so much respect for what they've done to continue to grow and become a more significant business. And then as platform, as their leverage has grown, they haven't just kept doing the same things. They've realized there's opportunity to work at a larger and larger scale. They've always been so generous with their time, whether it's consulting with large external brands to help them in a shift into organic cottons and away from pesticides, whether it's opening up their supply chain and really sharing their best suppliers with the world. You can go on their website, Cleanest Line, and dig in and actually find out who they're using as suppliers. They have a transparency that is commendable. They have a kind of go-at-it attitude where they try meaty projects that might work and might not work, but have a good opportunity and make good sense to play with. And then they're just incredibly generous with sharing that learning and supporting all of those organizations like B Corp that, they're a fundamental part of that. They've really helped that community grow. Or now what they're working on with fair trade and what they've done in the material science space, from Blue Sign through to other kind of material certification. They continue to be a shining example of people doing things with goals beyond just profit, and yet profit continues to grow for them. They continue to become a meatier and meatier business, more able to have bigger effects in the world. It's so much time for Patagonia. Their main focus is the environment. For us, our main focus is life and the animals and humans. We then also make sure we do the best job we can on the environment. So we have slightly different focuses, but I think for their focus, I just think they continue to be such a wonderful example of a brand doing good beyond their walls.
Awesome. And before I let you go, Andy, where can people find you or find Bellroy online if they want to follow more of what you do?
Yeah, you bet. So Bellroy is BELLROY.com. The site will lead you onto a little bit. We're starting to post a bit more on Medium, and we're starting to try and up our social game so you can interact with Bellroy on Facebook, on Instagram. Certainly Medium is a good platform where we're starting to share some of our design heroes and some of the ideas behind how we've got to where we are. Yeah, I'm Andy Fallshaw on Instagram, and you can generally follow what is hopefully our increasing communications around what we're doing behind the scenes just by following those social channels at Bellroy.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me on Sproutcast today, Andy. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much. It was good fun.
Did you enjoy this episode of Sproutcast? Visit sproutcast.net to sign up for our newsletter. The newsletter includes copies of the show notes and additional content from each episode.